I am Eleanor, 32 years old, and proud owner of a beautiful 5-bedroom home on 3 acres outside Boston that took me 10 years to afford. Never did I imagine that after throwing me out of the family and declaring I was no longer their daughter 7 years ago, my parents would call demanding I host my golden child brother Ethan's lavish wedding at my house. When I refused, they planned to ambush me anyway with 200 guests. If you are watching this, let me know where you are from in the comments and subscribe to hear how I turned their scheme upside down. Growing up with my brother Ethan, who was 4 years younger than me, I always sensed something was different about how our parents treated us. At first, I thought maybe it was because he was younger or because he was a boy. But as the years passed, the pattern became undeniable. Ethan was the golden child and I was, well, just there. When I was 14, my parents announced they were using my college fund to send Ethan to an exclusive private school. He needs the special attention, my mother explained while folding laundry, not even looking at me. You are smart enough to get scholarships anyway. I nodded and walked away, too shocked to argue. That night I cried into my pillow, wondering what I had done wrong to deserve less than my brother. My academic achievements were consistently minimized, while Ethan's mediocre performances were celebrated as if he had won Nobel Prizes. I still remember bringing home straight, as in my junior year, only to have my report card glanced at and set aside with a casual, "Good job." That same evening, Ethan proudly displayed his report card filled with B's and 1 A-. My parents took him out for ice cream to celebrate his tremendous improvement. Christmas and birthdays only reinforced the disparity. While Ethan received the latest gaming systems, designer clothes, and expensive electronics, I typically got practical items like socks, study guides, or occasionally a sweater from a discount store. One Christmas when I was 16, I received a scientific calculator for school, while Ethan got a brand new laptop. "You need to focus on your studies," my father said when he noticed my disappointed expression. Ethan needs the laptop for his creative projects. Sports versus academics also highlighted their favoritism. My parents never missed a single one of Ethan's baseball games, even rearranging their work schedules to attend his practice sessions. Meanwhile, when I performed in the state piano competition, after 6 months of intensive practice, neither parent showed up. "Something came up at work," my mother explained later, not noticing how red and puffy my eyes were from crying. Despite this environment, I developed a passion for architecture early on. By 12, I was drawing detailed house plans and creating 3-dimensional models from cardboard and craft supplies. My bedroom walls were covered with sketches of buildings and innovative home designs. My parents dismissed it as just a phase and suggested I focus on something practical instead. High school graduation should have been my moment to shine. I was valedictorian and had earned a partial scholarship to State University. During my graduation party, which was combined with a celebration for Ethan making the freshman baseball team, my parents spent the entire time talking about Ethan's sports prospects. My achievement speech was the boring part they had to sit through before the real celebration began. College meant freedom, but also financial struggle. I worked 3 jobs simultaneously: morning shifts at a coffee shop, evening waitressing, and weekend tours at the campus welcome center. Every dollar went toward tuition and books. Meanwhile, Ethan received a brand new car for his 16th birthday because he needed reliable transportation for his many activities. Freshman year brought an unexpected gift: my roommate Rachel. She noticed the pattern during her first visit to my parents' house for Thanksgiving. "Is it always like this?" she whispered, after witnessing my mother interrupt my story about a difficult project to ask Ethan if he wanted more potatoes. Her recognition validated what I had felt for years but could never fully articulate. Then came Thomas, my first serious boyfriend, sophomore year. He was studying psychology and noticed the family dynamic immediately. "That is textbook favoritism," he said after meeting my family. "The way they dismiss you is not normal, Eleanor." His perspective helped me see that the problem wasn't me being too sensitive, as my mother always claimed. When I declared architecture as my major, my parents were openly dismissive. "Such a competitive field," my father commented with a disapproving shake of his head. "You would be better off in teaching or nursing. Something stable." When I tried to explain my passion for design, my mother cut me off to ask Ethan about his weekend plans. Throughout college, the emotional distance between my parents and me grew as I gained perspective on our relationship. Every visit home became more strained as I began establishing boundaries. "No, I cannot drop everything to drive Ethan to his friend's house," I said during one visit, leading to an hour-long lecture about being selfish and unsupportive. As Ethan entered his teens, his entitled behavior worsened. He would demand I help him with homework when I was home, even though I was drowning in my own assignments. If I refused, he would complain to our parents, resulting in them calling me to express their disappointment in my lack of family commitment. The one bright spot in my academic journey was Professor Harriet Wells, who recognized my talent in architectural design and became my mentor. "You have a unique vision," she told me after class one day. "Do not let anyone dim your light." Her encouragement sustained me through the darkest periods of self-doubt. By sophomore year, I had started creating firm boundaries. I limited visits home to major holidays. I stopped answering every call immediately. I began declining unreasonable requests to babysit Ethan or help with household tasks during my limited study time. Each boundary was met with guilt trips and accusations of being different and difficult. But with each small act of self-protection, I grew stronger. After graduating with honors in architecture, I faced the harsh reality of a competitive job market. For 3 months, I sent out dozens of applications each week, facing rejection after rejection. Finally, I landed an entry-level position at Lawrence and Associates, a prestigious architecture firm in Boston. The salary was barely enough to cover basic expenses, but it was a foot in the door of my dream career. I moved into a tiny apartment with 3 roommates: Rachel from college, Jasmine, who worked at a publishing house, and Kim, who was in nursing school. We shared a cramped 2-bedroom unit with Rachel and me in one room and Jasmine and Kim in the other. The living conditions were less than ideal, but we made it work, creating a supportive environment that felt more like home than my parents' house ever did. At Lawrence and Associates, I threw myself into proving my worth. My alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. each morning, and I rarely left the office before 8 p.m. I volunteered for every project, no matter how small or tedious. I brought coffee for senior architects and stayed late to clean up after client meetings. No task was beneath me if it meant learning more about the profession I loved. After a year of 70-hour work weeks and consistently positive feedback, an opportunity arose that could accelerate my career. The firm selected 3 junior associates to participate in a specialized training program in sustainable design, an emerging field with tremendous potential. The catch: it required $5,000 in tuition that the firm expected participants to cover themselves. I examined my budget from every angle, but there was no way to squeeze out that kind of money while keeping a roof over my head. With great reluctance, I called my parents to ask for a loan. I prepared a detailed repayment plan, including interest, and practiced my pitch several times before dialing their number. "Mom, Dad, I have been selected for a special training program that could really advance my career," I explained, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "I need to borrow $5,000, but I will repay every cent with interest." I slid the carefully prepared document across their kitchen table during a Sunday visit. My father barely glanced at my repayment plan before pushing it back toward me. "We do not have that kind of money to spare right now," he said firmly. "Things are tight with property taxes going up." My mother nodded in agreement. "Besides, is this architecture thing really working out? You are living with 3 roommates at your age. Maybe this is a sign you should consider a more practical career." I left their house that day feeling defeated but not surprised. What did surprise me was the call I received from cousin Linda just 1 week later. "I thought you would be at Ethan's Bon Voyage party," she said when I answered. "Everyone is there celebrating his Europe trip." "What Europe trip?" I asked, confusion evident in my voice. There was an awkward pause before Linda continued. "Oh, your parents gave Ethan $20,000 for a summer trip through Europe before he starts college. They are throwing him a big send-off party right now." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. $20,000 for a vacation, while they couldn't spare $5,000 for my education. I ended the call with Linda and immediately drove to my parents' house, arriving just as guests were leaving the party. You gave Ethan $20,000 for a vacation, I demanded as soon as I found my parents in the kitchen. 1 week after telling me you could not spare $5,000 for a professional development course that would advance my career, my mother's expression hardened. That is different. Ethan needs cultural experiences before college. It is educational. And my architectural training is not educational. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You have always been difficult, Eleanor, my mother snapped. Always so dramatic and ungrateful for everything we have done for you. My father stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. We made choices based on what was best for both of you. Your brother has different needs. Different needs or different value, I shot back. You have always favored him. Always. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college while you handed him everything. And now you are giving him $20,000 for a vacation, while telling me you cannot loan me a quarter of that amount for professional training. Your attitude has always been your problem, my father said dismissively. You chose that impractical career path. That was your decision. We warned you architecture was too competitive. My career is going well, I defended. I am at a prestigious firm. This training would help me advance faster. If it is going so well, why do you need our money? My mother countered. Why are you living with 3 roommates like a college student? Ethan has real potential. He needs our support. The argument escalated as years of pent-up frustration poured out. I pointed out dozens of instances of favoritism throughout our childhood. Each example was met with denial or justification. Eventually, my mother threw up her hands in exasperation. If we are such terrible parents, maybe we are not your parents anymore, she said, her voice cold and final. I stared at her in shock. What does that mean? My father stepped forward. It means you should leave now. Do not come back until you adjust your attitude and show some gratitude for everything we have done for you. Gratitude. For what? For using my college fund for Ethan's private school, for missing every important event in my life, while never missing a single one of his baseball games, for giving him 20 times what I ever received in gifts and support. Get out of our house, my father said, pointing toward the door. You are not welcome here until you apologize for this disrespect. I drove back to my apartment in tears, barely able to see the road. Rachel found me curled up on our shared bed, sobbing uncontrollably. She held me while I poured out the whole story. They disowned me, I kept repeating. They actually disowned me because I called them out on their favoritism. The week that followed was one of the darkest periods of my life. I could barely get out of bed to go to work. I kept expecting my parents to call and apologize to recognize how extreme their reaction had been. But my phone remained silent. After 2 weeks without contact, I made a decision I would move forward without their approval. I approached Professor Wells, who helped me secure a scholarship for the training program through her industry connections. She also connected me with a therapist who specialized in family trauma. What you are experiencing is real, Dr. Sarah Jensen told me during our first session. Parental favoritism can cause lasting psychological damage. But you can heal and build a life on your own terms. Those words became my mantra as I began the painful process of accepting my family's rejection. Each therapy session helped me understand that I wasn't the problem, and never had been. The problem was a family dynamic that had been established long before I was old enough to recognize it. Your worth is not determined by your parents' ability to see it, Dr. Jensen reminded me often. I wrote this on a sticky note and placed it on my bathroom mirror, reading it aloud each morning as I prepared to face another day. 7 years passed in what felt like both an eternity and a blink. After completing the specialized training in sustainable design, I quickly became the go-to junior architect for environmentally conscious projects at Lawrence and Associates. My dedication and innovative approaches earned me a promotion to project lead within 3 years. During a presentation for a potential client seeking to build a net-zero office complex, I met Walter Harrison, CEO of Harrison Developments. Unlike many clients who treated junior architects as barely visible, Walter engaged directly with my ideas, asking thoughtful questions about my sustainable design approaches. "You think differently," he told me, after awarding his company's project to our firm with the stipulation that I would be the primary architect. "You see opportunities where others see constraints." That project became the turning point in my career. The Harrison office complex won 3 industry awards for innovation in sustainable design, and my name became associated with forward-thinking architecture. More clients began specifically requesting me for their projects, and my salary increased accordingly. By year 5 post-disownment, I had been promoted to senior architect and had begun building a substantial savings account. Living frugally had become second nature during my college years, and I maintained those habits even as my income grew. While colleagues purchased luxury cars or designer wardrobes, I continued sharing an apartment with Rachel and funneling most of my earnings into savings for my true dream, owning a home that I designed myself. House hunting became my weekend activity in year 6. I visited dozens of properties, always looking for potential rather than perfection. After 9 months of searching, I found a rundown colonial on 3 acres of land just outside Boston. The house needed significant work, but it had solid bones and was situated on a gentle hill with southern exposure, perfect for the solar array I envisioned. The bank approved my mortgage application without hesitation. Years of careful financial management had given me an excellent credit score, and my position as senior architect provided the income stability lenders desired. The day I signed the closing papers and received the keys was the proudest moment of my life to that point. "I did this completely on my own," I whispered to myself, as I stood in the empty living room of my new home, keys clutched tightly in my hand. The realization brought both pride and a twinge of sadness that I had no family to share the milestone with. Renovations became my nights and weekends for the next 2 years. I designed each modification myself, creating the sustainable, beautiful home I had sketched in countless notebooks since childhood. I learned to tile a bathroom, install kitchen cabinets, and refinish hardwood floors. For specialized work like electrical and plumbing, I hired professionals but worked alongside them, absorbing their knowledge for future projects. The 3-acre property gradually transformed as well. I planted a vegetable garden in the south field and created a meditation space beneath a mature oak tree. Native plants and pollinator-friendly flowers replaced the neglected lawn, reducing water usage and creating habitat for local wildlife. During this transformation, I formed a friendship with my neighbors Susan and Brian Johnson. They were in their 50s and had lived in their home for 20 years. Susan brought over homemade bread the day I moved in, and Brian offered use of his riding mower until I could purchase my own lawn equipment. "We have been hoping someone would restore that beautiful old house," Susan told me during that first visit. "We are so glad it was you." The Johnsons became regular fixtures in my new life. They joined me for dinner once a week, offering advice on everything from where to find the best local honey to which contractor would give the fairest price for refinishing the hardwood floors. Their support helped fill the family-shaped hole in my life. As my home neared completion, I began hosting small gatherings. First just Rachel and a few close friends from work, then larger dinner parties as my confidence grew. I created new traditions: summer solstice barbecues, Halloween pumpkin carving contests, and winter solstice potlucks. These events gradually built a chosen family of friends who genuinely cared about my well-being. Throughout these 7 years, I had no contact with my parents or Ethan. The pain of their rejection had dulled with time and therapy, but occasional reminders would still trigger a deep sadness. Cousin Linda provided infrequent updates when we connected on social media. Through her, I learned that Ethan had dropped out of college after 2 years, claiming it wasn't the right fit for his entrepreneurial spirit. According to Linda, my parents funded Ethan's startup, a social media management company that struggled to find clients but somehow remained afloat. Then, about a year before my story's climax, Linda mentioned that Ethan had met Allison Blackwell, daughter of a wealthy family who owned a chain of luxury hotels on the East Coast. They got engaged after only 6 months of dating, Linda told me during one of our rare phone calls. "Your parents are thrilled. Her family is very well connected." I felt a momentary pang of something like grief for the relationship I might have had with a sister-in-law under different circumstances. But I had long since accepted that my family existed in a different world from mine, one I was no longer permitted to enter. In my own world, I had begun dating James Collins, a landscape architect I met through a mutual client. James was kind, supportive, and understood my passion for sustainable design. He also recognized the lingering effects of my family trauma and never pushed me to reconcile or forgive and forget. Family is who treats you like family, he often said, not just who shares your DNA. My home became our primary gathering place. James, Rachel, and her boyfriend Daniel, and several other close friends spent holidays and weekends there, filling it with the warmth and laughter I had always envisioned. We cooked elaborate meals, played board games, and sat around the fire pit I had built in the backyard, sharing stories and building connections. During these 7 years, Dr. Jensen helped me process my occasional feelings of loss and abandonment. It is normal to mourn the family relationship you deserved, but never had she assured me. Acknowledging that grief does not mean you want to return to an unhealthy dynamic. By the time my story reached its climax, I had built a successful career, created a beautiful home, established meaningful friendships, and found a loving relationship. I had created peace and stability on my own terms. I had no idea that my carefully constructed world was about to be invaded by the past I had worked so hard to move beyond. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in May. I was working from home reviewing blueprints for an eco-friendly community center when my phone rang, displaying an unknown number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but I was expecting a call from a contractor, so I answered. "Hello? Eleanor, is that you?" The voice sent an electric shock through my body. My mother, after 7 years of complete silence. "Yes," I managed to respond, my hand gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "This is Eleanor." "Oh, good. I was worried you might have changed your number after all this time." Her tone was casual, as if we had spoken last week instead of 7 years ago. "How are you, dear?" The absurdity of the question left me momentarily speechless. How was I, after being thrown out of the family and told not to return, until I apologized for pointing out their blatant favoritism? "I am fine," I finally responded, keeping my voice neutral. "Why are you calling?" "Can't a mother check in on her daughter?" she asked with a forced lightness that immediately put me on edge. "I hear you have quite a nice house now." 3 acres, is it? Linda mentioned. "You have done a lot of work on it." So, this was not a random check-in. She wanted something. The realization both hurt and angered me. 7 years of silence, only to reach out when she needed something from me. "Yes, I have a home," I confirmed without offering details. "Again, why are you calling?" There was a slight pause before she continued with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Well, I have such exciting news. Your brother Ethan is getting married to Allison Blackwell. You probably have not heard of her family, but they are very well connected. The Blackwells own those luxury sapphire hotels along the East Coast." "Congratulations to Ethan," I said automatically. "Linda mentioned the engagement about a year ago." "Oh." She sounded momentarily thrown that her news wasn't actually news. "Well, the wedding planning has been just wonderful. They have hired Vivian Porter, you know, the celebrity wedding planner who did that movie star wedding last year, the one that was in all the magazines." As she rambled about flower arrangements and custom table linens, I wondered again why she was calling me. Surely not to invite me to the wedding after 7 years of estrangement. "They are expecting over 200 guests," she continued. "Many very important people. Allison's father plays golf with the governor, you know." "Mom," I interrupted her monologue. "This is very interesting, but I have work to do. Why did you call me today?" Another pause, longer this time. "Well, we have had a bit of a situation with the venue. The Sapphire Hotel in Newport was supposed to host the wedding, but there was a terrible pipe burst last week. Water damage everywhere. Simply disastrous. They will not be able to repair everything in time." A sinking feeling formed in the pit of my stomach as I began to see where this conversation was heading. "That is unfortunate," I said carefully. I am sure there are other venues available. Well, that is just it, my mother said, her voice taking on a wheedling quality I remembered all too well from childhood. Everything suitable is booked months in advance. The wedding is in just 3 weeks. And then Linda mentioned your lovely home on all that land. There it was, the reason for breaking 7 years of silence. You want to have Ethan's wedding at my house? I asked, needing to hear her say it directly. It would be perfect, she exclaimed, as if I had enthusiastically suggested the idea myself. All that open space for the tent and your house could be the backdrop for photos. Vivian says homes with character make for the most elegant wedding pictures. I sat in stunned silence trying to process the audacity of this request. After 7 years without a single call, text, or email, after throwing me out of the family and telling me not to return, they wanted to use my home for a lavish wedding for their golden child. Eleanor, are you still there? My mother prompted. Yes, I managed. I am just processing your request. Well, it is not really a request, is it? It is family duty. Ethan is your only brother. Of course you would want to help make his special day perfect. The casual dismissal of our estrangement pushed me from shock to anger. Family duty, Mom. You and Dad told me I was no longer your daughter 7 years ago. You said not to come back until I apologized for pointing out how unfairly you treated me compared to Ethan. In 7 years you have not called once to check on me or to apologize. Oh, Eleanor, she sighed as if I were being tedious. That was just a little disagreement. Families have those. You have always been one to hold grudges. A little disagreement, I repeated incredulously. You disowned me. Such dramatic language, she dismissed. Anyway, that is all water under the bridge now. What matters is your brother's wedding. We will need access to the property a few days before to set everything up. The wedding planner will coordinate everything. You will hardly need to do a thing. Her presumption left me breathless. In her mind, my answer was already given. Of course I would say yes. Of course I would open my home, the sanctuary I had built with my own hands and hard work, to the family that had cast me aside without a second thought. No, I said firmly. I will not be hosting Ethan's wedding at my home. The silence that followed was so complete, I wondered if the call had dropped. Then I heard a sharp intake of breath. You must be joking, my mother finally responded, her voice hardening. This is your brother's wedding. After everything we have done for you, you would refuse this one thing. What exactly have you done for me in the past 7 years? I asked quietly. Or even in the years before that, you used my college fund for Ethan's private school. You missed every important event in my life while never missing any of his. You refused to loan me money for professional training but gave Ethan $20,000 for a European vacation. And then you disowned me when I pointed these things out. You have always been difficult, she snapped, abandoning the friendly facade entirely. Always so sensitive and seeing slights where none existed. We gave you everything you needed. The answer is no, I repeated firmly. I will not host Ethan's wedding. I need to go now. Your father will be very disappointed to hear about your selfishness, she said, her voice cold. After all we sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us, by ruining your brother's special day. Goodbye, Mom, I said, ending the call before she could continue. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set the phone down on the table. I felt lightheaded and slightly nauseated. 7 years of building a life of therapy, of healing, and one phone call had sent me spiraling back into the familiar feelings of inadequacy and guilt. I immediately called Rachel. You will not believe who just called me, I said when she answered. Based on your voice, I am guessing not the lottery commission with good news, she replied. I explained the entire conversation, my voice rising with indignation, as I recounted my mother's casual dismissal of our estrangement, and her entitled expectation that I would open my home for Ethan's wedding. The audacity, Rachel exclaimed when I finished. 7 years of silence and then, hey, can we use your house for a wedding for the brother you have not spoken to since they disowned you? Unbelievable. Am I overreacting? I asked, the old insecurity creeping in. Am I being selfish? Eleanor, stop. You know that is your mother's voice in your head, not reality. You have every right to say no. Your home is your sanctuary. You built it yourself after they cut you off completely. They have absolutely no right to it. James came over that evening after I texted him about the call. He brought takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant and listened as I recounted the conversation again. I keep thinking about what she said, I admitted as we sat on my back deck watching the sunset. About ruining Ethan's special day. Am I being petty by refusing? James took my hand. Eleanor, listen to me. You are not responsible for solving their venue problem. They are adults with resources. They will find another location. This is not about Ethan's wedding. This is about boundaries and respect, neither of which your parents have shown you. Deep down, I knew he and Rachel were right. This was about much more than a wedding venue. This was about 7 years of silence followed by an entitled demand. This was about a family dynamic that had caused me years of pain and therapy. This was about standing firm in my own worth. I just cannot believe they thought I would say yes, I said, shaking my head. What world do they live in where that made sense? A world where they have always gotten their way, James replied. A world where Ethan's needs always came first. They simply assumed that dynamic would continue, despite everything that has happened. As I went to bed that night, I felt stronger in my resolve. I had made the right decision in refusing. I had no obligation to host a wedding for a brother I had not spoken to in 7 years at the behest of parents who had disowned me. My home was my sanctuary, built through my own hard work and determination. I would not open it to people who had shown me so clearly that I did not matter to them. Little did I know that my refusal was only the beginning of what would become an increasingly bizarre and audacious attempt to commandeer my property. The day after my mother's call, my phone began buzzing with notifications. First came a series of text messages from her. Reconsidered yet? We need to give Vivian an answer by tomorrow. Your stubbornness is causing unnecessary stress for Ethan and Allison. The Blackwells are very disappointed in your lack of family support. I silenced the notifications without responding. Then came a voicemail from my father, his first communication in 7 years. Eleanor, this childish behavior needs to stop. Your brother needs your help. This is what family does. Call your mother back and tell her you have come to your senses. Not a word of greeting, not a single acknowledgement of the years of silence, just a demand that I fall in line with their plans. Over the next 3 days, the pressure campaign expanded. My Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, whom I had always been fond of, called next. Eleanor, sweetie, it has been so long, she began warmly. How are you? We chatted for a few minutes about my career and house, before she awkwardly transitioned to the real purpose of her call. So I hear there is some confusion about Ethan's wedding venue, she said delicately. Your mother mentioned you were hesitant about hosting. It is not confusion, Aunt Carol, I replied. I clearly declined. And I find it strange that after 7 years of no contact, the first time my parents reach out is to demand use of my home. 7 years. What do you mean, she asked, genuine confusion in her voice. Your mother talks about your Sunday dinners all the time. She just mentioned last month how you brought a wonderful quiche to their house. I nearly dropped the phone. Would I have not been to their house or spoken to them in 7 years? Not since they told me I was no longer their daughter, and to not come back until I apologized for pointing out their favoritism toward Ethan. There was a long pause. That cannot be right, Carol finally said, but her voice held uncertainty. She talks about you all the time, about your visits and family gatherings. She is lying, Aunt Carol. I have the text messages from 7 years ago if you want to see them. I have not had a single conversation with either of my parents until my mother called about the wedding venue. The revelation that my parents had been creating fictional accounts of our relationship stunned me almost as much as it seemed to stun Carol. She ended the call awkwardly, promising to get to the bottom of this. Next came Uncle Peter, my father's brother, with a much more direct approach. Your parents gave you everything, he began without preamble when I answered his call. The least you can do is help your brother in his time of need. Hello to you too, Uncle Peter, I replied coolly. Interesting that you think my parents gave me everything, considering they used my college fund for Ethan's private school and I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college. That is not how they tell it, he countered. They paid for your education and supported your career choice despite their reservations. Another lie. The revelation that my parents had been actively creating an alternate reality about our relationship for the past 7 years was both infuriating and deeply sad. The true extent of their deception became clear when cousin Linda called with a warning. "I overheard your parents talking at family dinner last night," she said in a hushed voice. "They are planning to just show up at your place with the wedding party. They are telling everyone you agreed but are being difficult about the details. They figure once everyone is there, you will not make a scene by turning them away." My blood ran cold. They are planning to ambush me with an entire wedding party, without my permission. "Yes," Linda confirmed. "The wedding is scheduled for Saturday, June 15th. They have already told everyone your address." As if to confirm Linda's warning, I began receiving calls from vendors that my mother had apparently given my contact information to. "A catering company called to confirm the menu selections for the event at your address. A rental company delivered sample chairs to my home, without warning, leaving them on the porch, with a note about the upcoming wedding. A florist called asking about scheduling a site inspection for the wedding arrangements. The wedding planner's assistant contacted me about setup logistics and power supply locations." The final confirmation came when a friend sent me a screenshot of the wedding invitation she had received. There was my address printed in elegant script along with detailed directions to my home, and a note about ample space for parking on the expansive grounds. The realization that they were actually going through with this plan triggered a full-blown panic attack. I sat on my kitchen floor, struggling to breathe, as the enormity of the situation hit me. 200 strangers planned to descend on my property in 3 weeks for a wedding I had explicitly refused to host. I called an emergency meeting with Rachel James and my neighbor Susan. We gathered around my dining room table that evening, strategizing over pizza and wine. "They cannot legally do this," Rachel insisted. "This is trespassing, plain and simple." "I agree," James said. "You need to talk to a lawyer immediately." Susan, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "My son Andrew is an attorney. He specializes in property law. I can call him tonight if you want." I gratefully accepted her offer, and Andrew arrived an hour later with a legal pad and serious expression. After hearing the full story, he outlined my options. "We can start with a cease and desist letter," he explained. "Make it clear in writing that you have not given permission for this event, and will consider anyone who arrives for it to be trespassing." "Will that stop them?" I asked doubtfully. "It creates a paper trail proving you explicitly denied permission," he replied. "And if they ignore it, we can file for a temporary restraining order. Given the evidence of their planned trespass, I think a judge would grant it." The next morning, I filed paperwork for the restraining order with Andrew's help. I provided copies of text messages, voicemails, and vendor contacts as evidence of the planned invasion of my property. While waiting for the legal process, I took additional precautions. I hired a security company to assess my property and recommend measures to prevent unwanted entry. They installed temporary cameras at my driveway entrance and suggested having security personnel present on the day of the planned wedding. I also contacted a property management company that specialized in event security. They agreed to have representatives present to document any attempted trespass and to support the legal consequences that would follow. With each preparation, my anxiety mingled with growing resolve. This was my home, my sanctuary built with my own hard work after being cast out by the very people now trying to take it over without permission. I would not allow it. As the planned wedding date approached, I received disturbing new information from Linda. Apparently, Ethan had been telling his fiancée Allison that I had enthusiastically offered my home for their wedding. According to Linda, he described me as thrilled to help make their day special and claimed we had been planning this together for months. "Allison has no idea you have been estranged," Linda told me. "She thinks you and Ethan are close and that this is your wedding gift to them." The realization that this was not even about reconciliation or family connection, but simply about having an elegant backdrop for wedding photos was the final straw. My parents and brother were not only planning to trespass on my property, but were building an elaborate fiction about our relationship to manipulate an innocent woman. The week before the planned wedding date was filled with increasing anxiety but also strengthening determination. I finalized security arrangements, confirmed the restraining order was in place, and notified the local police department of the potential situation. I also prepared a backup plan. If my parents were determined to have a wedding that day, I would ensure one was available to them, just not at my home. But this gesture would come with conditions, ones that might finally force them to confront the reality of their behavior over the years. As Saturday approached, I packed a weekend bag and made arrangements to stay at a luxury spa resort 30 miles away. Whatever happened at my property, I would not be present for the confrontation. I would allow the legal and security teams to handle it, while I protected my own peace and well-being. The stage was set for a confrontation 7 years in the making. My parents had thrown me out of the family once. Now they were about to discover that their actions had consequences they never anticipated. The morning of June 15th dawned clear and beautiful, the kind of perfect early summer day that wedding planners dream about. By 7 a.m., my support team was assembled at my home. Rachel and James had stayed overnight, providing emotional support and helping with final preparations. The security team had arrived at 6, establishing checkpoints at my driveway entrance. 2 police officers waited discreetly down the road, ready to respond if needed. Andrew and a representative from the property management company sat at my kitchen table, reviewing legal documents one final time. "The restraining order is active," Andrew confirmed. "Anyone listed attempts to enter the property, they will be in violation. And we have copies to present to them," the property manager added, patting a folder beside him. At 8:30 a.m., I hugged my friends goodbye, picked up my weekend bag, and walked to the car James had parked behind the house, hidden from the main driveway. We had arranged for me to stay at the Birchwood Spa Resort, a luxury retreat with a strict privacy policy. Whatever chaos unfolded at my property today, I would be safely removed from it, preserving my mental health while letting the legal system handle the confrontation. "Call me if anything major happens," I told Rachel as I got into the car. "Otherwise, I will see you Sunday evening." "We have got this," she assured me. "You focus on relaxing. You have done everything right." As James drove me away, I caught a glimpse in the side mirror of a white van turning into my driveway. The first wedding vendors had arrived right on schedule. According to Rachel's detailed account later, the morning unfolded exactly as we had anticipated. The first arrivals were the decoration team and caterers, who were politely but firmly stopped at the security checkpoint. Each was given a copy of the cease and desist letter explaining that no wedding had been authorized at this location, along with contact information for the alternate venue I had arranged. Most vendors were understanding, if confused. "We were just following the client's instructions," the head caterer explained apologetically. "We had no idea there was a problem." At 10:30 a.m., the key players arrived. My mother and father pulled up in their luxury sedan, followed closely by a Range Rover containing who Rachel presumed was the wedding planner. The security guard approached their vehicles while Rachel, Andrew, and the property manager watched from a discreet distance. "I am sorry, but this is private property," the guard explained, handing my father a copy of the cease and desist letter. "The owner has not authorized any event here today." My father's face flushed with anger as he scanned the document. "This is ridiculous. I am Eleanor's father. She cannot keep us off this property." "Actually, sir, she can," the guard replied calmly. "She is the legal owner, and she has explicitly denied permission for this event. Additionally, this restraining order legally prohibits you from entering the property." My mother exited the car, her carefully applied makeup not quite hiding her fury. "Where is she? Where is Eleanor? I demand to speak with her." "Miss Williams is not present," the property manager explained, stepping forward. "I represent Williams Property Management, Miss. Williams has authorized me to inform you that any attempt to enter this property will result in trespassing charges." The wedding planner emerged from her vehicle, tablet in hand, and clearly distressed. "What is going on? We have 200 guests arriving in less than 2 hours." As if on cue, more cars began turning into the driveway, creating a growing line behind my parents' vehicles. Guests were arriving early, likely planning to explore the grounds before the ceremony. Perhaps you should move your vehicles and explain the situation to your guests, Andrew suggested calmly. Continuing to block the driveway could constitute an additional violation. My father jabbed a finger toward Andrew. This is a family matter. You have no right to interfere. As Miss Williams' legal representative, I have every right, Andrew replied, unruffled. Now I suggest you move your vehicles and inform your guests that the wedding will not be taking place at this location. The confrontation escalated as more guests arrived, creating a traffic jam at the entrance to my property. My mother began loudly proclaiming that I was mentally unstable and always seeking attention, while my father threatened various legal actions, all of which Andrew calmly explained were groundless. The watershed moment came when a luxury SUV pulled up and a young couple emerged. Even from Rachel's description, I could tell this was Ethan and Allison. Ethan, now 28, looked like a more polished version of the teenager I remembered. Beside him stood a tall, elegant woman in a white sundress, presumably for the pre-wedding preparations. "What is happening?" Ethan demanded, approaching the growing cluster of people at my driveway entrance. "Why is everyone standing around out here?" The wedding planner turned to him in evident distress. "Your sister has refused to allow the wedding on her property. She has security guards and lawyers preventing anyone from entering." Allison's confusion was immediate and obvious. "What? But, you said Eleanor was thrilled to host our wedding. You said you had been planning this together for months." "There has been a misunderstanding," Ethan stammered, not meeting her eyes. My mother jumped in. "Eleanor is just being difficult as usual. She agreed to host the wedding but is now creating drama for attention." "That is not accurate," Rachel interjected, stepping forward with her phone. "I have Eleanor's complete call history. There was exactly one call from her mother during which Eleanor explicitly declined to host this event. There was no agreement at any point." Allison turned to Ethan, her expression hardening. "You told me you and your sister were close. You said she offered her home as a wedding gift because you two have such a special bond." Ethan's face paled. I thought she would change her mind once she saw how important this was." "So you lied to me," Allison stated flatly. "And to my parents, who are arriving any minute with 200 guests." The situation was rapidly deteriorating when Andrew stepped forward with an envelope. "Miss Williams anticipated this scenario and has authorized me to present an alternative." He handed the envelope to Allison, "Not to my parents, or Ethan. This is for you as an innocent party in this situation." Allison opened the envelope and pulled out the contents, her eyes widening as she read. "This is a confirmed reservation at Meadowbrook Vineyard Estate for today. Paid in full, with a note from Eleanor." She read aloud from my handwritten letter. "Allison, we have never met, but I suspect you have been told many untruths about me and my relationship with my family. I was disowned 7 years ago, and have had no contact with my parents or brother since then. While I cannot allow my home to be used for this wedding, I do not wish to see your day ruined by my family's deceptions. This alternative venue is my gift to you, with one condition: that my parents and brother acknowledge the truth about our estrangement to you and your family. I wish you happiness in your marriage and hope it is built on honesty and mutual respect, unlike my relationship with my family of origin." A heavy silence fell over the group. Allison looked from the letter to Ethan, then to my parents. "Is this true?" she asked, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "Did you disown Eleanor 7 years ago? Have you had no contact with her until trying to use her home for our wedding?" My mother attempted to dismiss the claim. "She is exaggerating as usual. We had a small disagreement, but Eleanor always makes everything so dramatic." "7 years is not a small disagreement," Rachel countered. "And I was there when it happened. They explicitly told Eleanor she was no longer their daughter, and to not return until she apologized for pointing out their favoritism toward Ethan." Allison turned to my father. "Sir, I need to hear the truth right now. My entire family is about to arrive for a wedding at a location we apparently have no right to use based on what seems to be a web of lies." Put on the spot, and with his future daughter-in-law's steely gaze fixed on him, my father faltered, "We may have been harsher than necessary during a family disagreement, but Eleanor should have reached out to reconcile." After you disowned her, Allison pressed. We were angry, he admitted reluctantly. Things were said in the heat of the moment. And in 7 years did you ever call to apologize or check on her well-being? Allison continued, her questioning relentless. My mother interjected. She knew she could call us when she was ready to be reasonable. Allison's expression made it clear this answer was insufficient. She turned back to the letter in her hands, then to Andrew. This vineyard. It is available right now. The entire day. Yes, Andrew confirmed. Miss Williams made the arrangements yesterday. Everything is paid for, including the venue basic decorations, catering for 200 guests, and a 3-tier cake. The vineyard is expecting you and can be ready for a ceremony by the original time on your invitation. Allison took a deep breath, visibly processing this information. Then she turned to Ethan. We need to talk, privately. They walked a short distance away, engaged in an intense conversation that included Allison gesturing emphatically and Ethan repeatedly running his hands through his hair in evident distress. Meanwhile, more guests continued to arrive, creating an increasingly chaotic scene. The wedding planner, showing impressive professional adaptability, began directing arriving vehicles to park along the road rather than blocking my driveway, while explaining that there had been a last-minute venue change. After several minutes, Allison and Ethan returned to the group. Allison addressed the wedding planner directly, ignoring my parents entirely. We will be moving the wedding to Meadowbrook Vineyard Estate, she announced decisively. Please coordinate with the staff there to transfer as much of our planned setup as possible. She then turned to my parents, her expression cool and controlled. I expect complete honesty from this point forward. I will not begin my marriage with a foundation of lies. When we arrive at the vineyard, you will explain to my parents exactly what happened with Eleanor, including the 7-year estrangement that you conveniently never mentioned. My mother began to protest, but Allison held up her hand. This is not negotiable. Either you tell the truth today, or Ethan and I will postpone this wedding until we can be certain of what kind of family we are joining. With that ultimatum delivered, Allison turned to Andrew. Please thank Eleanor for her generosity. It speaks volumes about her character, that she would provide this alternative despite how she has been treated. As the wedding party regrouped and prepared to relocate to the vineyard, Rachel overheard a revealing exchange between my parents. This is humiliating, my mother hissed to my father. Everyone will be talking about this for years. We had no choice, my father replied tersely. The girl was ready to call off the wedding. Think of the connections we would lose. Of course that is what they cared about, Rachel told me later. Not the hurt they caused you, or the lies they told, but how this would affect their social standing. By noon, my property was cleared of all wedding-related vehicles and personnel. The security team remained in place until evening as a precaution, but no further attempts were made to access the property. Meanwhile, I spent a peaceful day at the spa resort, receiving periodic updates from Rachel, but otherwise focusing on self-care after the emotional strain of the preceding weeks. I had a massage, spent time in the sauna, and walked through the resort's meditation garden. As I sat by the private plunge pool outside my luxury cabin that evening, I felt an overwhelming sense of closure. I had stood my ground against the people who had hurt me most deeply. I had refused to be manipulated or bullied, and I had done so without compromising my own values or stooping to their level of deception and entitlement. The family that had once cast me aside had been forced to face the consequences of their actions, not through my vengeance, but through the natural outcomes of their own choices. There was a certain poetic justice in that, a symmetry that brought me peace rather than satisfaction. Whatever happened next with my family, I knew I had done the right thing for myself and, ironically, for Allison, who deserved to know the truth about the family she was marrying into. Perhaps that was the most powerful move of all, choosing integrity when those who should have taught it to me had abandoned it long ago. The days following the wedding confrontation passed in a blur of calm productivity. I returned from the spa resort on Sunday evening feeling refreshed and centered. Rachel greeted me with a detailed account of everything that had transpired in my absence, including Allison's impressive handling of the situation and my parents' obvious dismay at being held accountable. You should have seen their faces when Allison demanded they tell the truth, Rachel recounted, with undisguised satisfaction. They looked like they had swallowed lemons. On Monday morning, I returned to my normal routine, focusing on a sustainable housing project that had been temporarily overshadowed by the wedding drama. The ordinary rhythm of work felt especially precious after the emotional turbulence of recent weeks. Throughout the following days, Rachel kept me updated on the aftermath through her connections and social media. The wedding had indeed proceeded at Meadowbrook Vineyard Estate, with many guests posting photos of the surprise venue change that turned out to be even more magical than the original plan. Several commented on the generous sister of the groom who had secured the backup location, clearly repeating the sanitized version of events that had been shared. But not everyone accepted the polished narrative. By Wednesday, Linda reported that extended family members were buzzing with questions about the last-minute venue change and the mysterious sister who had both provided an alternative venue and been conspicuously absent from the celebration. Aunt Carol called me directly, Linda told me during our weekly catch-up call. She was horrified when I confirmed that yes, you really had been completely estranged for 7 years, and yes, your parents had been fabricating stories about regular family gatherings the entire time. By the weekend after the wedding, I began receiving tentative messages from extended family members I had not spoken to in years. Some offered awkward apologies for believing my parents' fiction. Others expressed shock and dismay at learning the truth. A few simply reached out to reconnect without directly addressing the elephant in the room. I responded selectively, maintaining boundaries while appreciating the genuine attempts at reconciliation. To Aunt Carol, who sent a heartfelt 3-page letter expressing her profound regret at not reaching out sooner, I extended an invitation for lunch the following month. To cousins who had been children when the estrangement began and were now young adults, curious about the cousin, they barely remembered I sent friendly but measured responses, opening the door to possible relationships without overcommitting. 10 days after the wedding, as Ethan and Allison were presumably still on their honeymoon, a surprising email arrived in my inbox. The subject line read simply, "Thank you from Allison." "Dear Eleanor," it began. "We have never met, but I feel I owe you a profound thank you and an equally profound apology. The venue you provided saved our wedding day and spared 200 guests, significant inconvenience and confusion. More importantly, it gave me insight into family dynamics I might otherwise have remained blind to for years." She went on to explain that after the ceremony, she had insisted my parents explain the full history of our estrangement to her parents. According to Allison, her father, a direct and principled businessman, had been appalled by their treatment of me and their subsequent deception. My father pulled Ethan aside afterward and told him in no uncertain terms that this was not how honorable men behave toward their sisters, and that he expected better from anyone marrying into our family, Allison wrote. "I have never been prouder of my dad, or more certain I made the right choice in insisting on the truth." She closed with an open invitation to meet for coffee, sometime after their return, with no pressure or expectations. "Whatever relationship you choose to have or not have with Ethan going forward, I would value the opportunity to know the woman who showed such grace under extraordinary circumstances." I saved her email to respond to, later touched by her maturity and directness. Whether anything would come of her invitation remained to be seen, but I appreciated the gesture for what it was, a recognition of my humanity from someone who could easily have seen me as merely an inconvenience to her perfect day. The most significant communication came 3 weeks after the wedding. An email from an address I did not recognize appeared in my inbox with the subject line, "From Ethan." I hesitated before opening it, preparing myself for accusations or justifications. Instead, I found something I had never expected: a genuine apology. "Eleanor," he wrote, "I do not even know how to begin this email. I am sorry. Seems woefully inadequate for everything that has happened, not just with the wedding, but for our entire childhood and beyond. But I have to start somewhere, so I will start there. I am deeply, profoundly sorry." He continued with a level of self-awareness I would never have expected from the entitled teenager I remembered. "I did not realize until recently how differently our parents treated us. It was normal to me because it was all I knew. You were the big sister who never got as much attention or support, and I was the little brother who got everything handed to him. I never questioned it because it benefited me. Ethan explained that Allison had been instrumental in helping him see the reality of our family dynamic. After the wedding venue disaster, Allison insisted I talk to a therapist about family patterns. Just 3 sessions in, I started to see things I had been blind to my entire life. The therapist asked me simple questions like, did your parents attend both your and Eleanor's important events equally, and were the financial resources of the family distributed fairly? The answers were so obviously no, but I had never thought about it before. He acknowledged learning about specific instances of favoritism I had experienced, including the college fund that went to his private school and the training opportunity loan I was denied while he received money for a European vacation. I had no idea about any of this, he wrote. Not that my ignorance is an excuse. I should have paid attention. I should have noticed. I should have spoken up when I saw you being treated differently. Most surprisingly, he took full responsibility for the wedding venue debacle. I lied to Allison about our relationship. I told her we were close and that you had offered your home as a wedding gift. I knew you had refused when Mom asked, but I thought if we just moved forward with the plans you would give in rather than make a scene. I was completely wrong, and my deception nearly cost me my marriage before it even began. He closed with a request. Rather than an expectation, I do not expect forgiveness or even a response. What I did, what our parents did, may be unforgivable. But if you ever feel ready to consider having some form of contact, even just an occasional email or text, I would welcome the opportunity to try to be the brother you always deserved but never had. Either way, I respect your decision and wish you well. I read the email several times, letting the words sink in. Was this genuine remorse or another manipulation? The Ethan I remembered had been self-centered and entitled, quick to use my parents' favoritism to his advantage. Could people really change that fundamentally? I decided to sit with the email for a while before responding. I forwarded it to Dr. Jensen and scheduled an appointment to discuss it with her, wanting to approach this unexpected development with both an open heart and appropriate caution. People can change, Dr. Jensen acknowledged during our session, but change is a process, not an event. If you decide to establish limited contact with your brother, do so with clear boundaries and realistic expectations. After careful consideration, I composed a measured response to Ethan. Thank you for your email and apology. I appreciate your honesty and self-reflection. I am not ready for regular contact, but I am open to occasional communication as we both continue our individual healing journeys. Perhaps in time we can build something new, not based on the unhealthy patterns of our childhood, but on mutual respect as the adults we have become. The exchange with Ethan represented a possibility I had long ago stopped considering, that some healing might be possible with at least one member of my family of origin. Not a return to the toxic dynamic of the past, but perhaps the beginning of something healthier approached with appropriate boundaries and expectations. My parents predictably made no such overtures. According to Linda, they had retreated into defensive justification after the wedding, insisting they had always done their best and that I was exaggerating the estrangement. Their continued refusal to acknowledge reality only confirmed my decision to maintain distance from them. As summer turned to fall, my life settled back into its pleasant rhythm. My relationship with James deepened, with talk of moving in together by the end of the year. Rachel announced she was pregnant and asked me to be the godmother, a role I accepted with tears of joy. My career continued to flourish, with a major sustainable housing project receiving industry recognition. The experience with my family's wedding scheme, while stressful, had ultimately strengthened rather than diminished me. Standing firm in my boundaries had reinforced my sense of self-worth. Providing the alternate venue had allowed me to act from my values rather than react from old wounds, and the unexpected aftermath had opened doors to selective healing on my terms. During a Thanksgiving dinner I hosted for my chosen family, I found myself looking around the table at the people who had stood by me through everything: Rachel and her husband Daniel James, the Johnsons from next door colleagues who had become friends, and even Aunt Carol, who had followed through on our lunch date and become a regular presence in my life. This was family, I realized. Not defined by blood or obligation, but by respect, support, and genuine care. These were the people who saw me clearly and valued me as I was. These were the relationships I had built on healthy foundations of mutuality and trust. The house around us, the home I had created with my own hands and determination, stood as a physical manifestation of the life I had built after being cast out. What my parents had intended as punishment had ultimately become liberation, forcing me to define my own worth rather than seeking it from those incapable of providing it. There is a special kind of peace that comes from standing in your truth, even when it would be easier to yield. There is profound strength in choosing your own path, even when others try to divert you. And there is unexpected joy in building your family of choice, free from the constraints of obligation and conditional acceptance. Have you ever had to stand firm against family pressure, or found yourself building a chosen family when your family of origin fell short? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more reflections on boundaries, self-worth, and creating the life you deserve. And if you know someone struggling with toxic family dynamics, consider sharing this video with them. Sometimes knowing we are not alone in these experiences is the first step toward healing. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the family you create through love and respect is every bit as real and valuable as the one you were born into.